It's often said that love makes the world go round, and maybe it's true. But whether you're married, living together, or just dating, being in love doesn't always mean being faithful. Today on Family Matters, we'll explore the controversial topic of infidelity. Experts tell us that infidelity accounts for the vast majority of marriage breakups. That's not surprising given all the temptation created by the internet. But still, I wonder why so many people find it impossible to be faithful to their partners. And what happens when they get caught? Is there a way to save a marriage after a spouse has had an affair? Should you even try? That's the topic of today's program, so get ready for some animated discussions. Our first guest is social worker David Fetter, who specializes in helping people deal with the impact of having had an affair. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
You operate a website called mylifeafteranaffair.com, and I found it was full of all kinds of really helpful information, both for people who have perpetrated an affair and also for the innocent party. What brought you to create such a website?
Well, one of the things I realized when I became interested in infidelity was that infidelity, in my opinion, is one of the most misunderstood of human choice and human behavior.
Misunderstood? Seems pretty clear to me.
Misunderstood in terms of treatment and the services offered or the assistance that could be offered to people.
And you actually provide services not just to the hurt party, but also to the party who has been unfaithful, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
And you say that anybody who has experienced infidelity will get through it. How?
Some people get through it without going for assistance. And for those people, it's just a matter of time. And I think that people will get through it just with the passage of time. But they won't necessarily recover fully in terms of being able to move on to other healthy relationships.
Well, the people I see in court are devastated. The feeling of betrayal and pain when someone discovers that the person that they thought was their life partner has betrayed them and hurt them so badly is absolutely palpable. It's toxic. So how do you help a person who's that devastated get past it and move on?
Well, first of all, with the statistics now showing that infidelity, in fact, affects 1 in every 2.7 couples, which is astounding. Yeah. I felt that people really needed a specialized treatment program.
So what is the program?
Instead of something that was generalized. Well, what I created was a program that I refer to as Vision.
Vision.
That's right. So it's a 6-phase or 6-step process. The first is V for Vision, in which I help people really to focus on what they want to achieve, where they want to see themselves 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road. I don't go too far ahead.
So you look ahead. That's the first step. What's the second?
Right. The next step is gaining insight into themselves, into their fears, into their wants, into their desires, and really help them to get in touch with that.
And who they are. And what's
who
the
they are and
step?
what they want. The next step would be S, or safety. And that is, we must create a sense of safety within the helping process. The first step for that is that the perpetrating partner, or the person who had the affair, has to take ownership of the decision to go outside the relationship, and they need to take responsibility for that. That's right.
And then what's the next step?
The next step is making intelligent choices, choices that are consistent with the vision that they create, making sure that the choices they make are consistent with that vision and not going to take them off course.
So be intelligent about it.
That's right.
And the next step?
The opportunity is making sure that, or shall we say, it's the true step of recovery when they could change the victim status and the tragedy of the affair into seeing it as an opportunity for growth.
Right.
You know, the
because every experience in life is a growing experience and
That's
a
right.
learning experience. And what's the last step, the N?
Nurture. Doing the work within a nurturing environment, which is based on empathy and compassion.
Now, you know, I'm in family court. I see couples who have broken up. But the reality is that many couples actually don't break up. When a person finds out that their spouse has been having an affair, there are people that stay together. Do you help them decide whether they should stay together?
The decision to stay together is not mine.
But do you help them decide
Help them get
it?
there? Yes, I take a look at, or help them take a look at, for example, what the relationship was like prior to the affair. For many people, if they had a solid relationship where they really felt that they were there for one another, and then with time see that the decision to have an affair was perhaps uncharacteristic. We look at the reasons why the affair occurred.
So do you help people learn how to forgive and give another chance? And trust again?
Some people, that certainly is part of the process. Not everybody will get there. Some people.
Well, should everybody get there? I would think there's lots of people that should never trust again.
I don't know that I would say that. I think that depending on the reason for the affair or the circumstances, if it's a serial offender, if you will, if it's multiple offenses, then I would agree that, you know, forgiving that person is not necessarily in their best interest. But forgiveness is really not for the other person. Forgiveness is for themselves. If I forgive you, for example, if you do something to me, then I'm forgiving you, but really I'm forgiving you for me so that I can move forward in my life without any carrying through with the toxic emotions that I have.
Well, it's clear to me that it's really all about maintaining your own emotional health. I want to thank you very much, David, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
When we come back after the break, we will talk more about infidelity in Chambers with psychologist Dr. Erwin Bukowski. Stay with us. We are back with our discussion of infidelity. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Erwin Bukowski, who is a psychologist with over 30 years' experience working with parents and children. Dr. Bukowski, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We are talking about a very sensitive issue that impacts so many relationships and families. And I understand that you work with couples who have come to you trying to salvage their marriages after an infidelity has been discovered.
Yeah, it's not an uncommon occurrence in my practice.
Do you find that it is possible to really salvage a relationship and restore it to the level of trust that there was before it was discovered?
Well, I think infidelity is experienced by those who are victimized by it as a tremendous betrayal and a fundamental betrayal of basic trust in a relationship. And while couples do work at reconciling and repairing their relationships, I've never been convinced that you can ever successfully repair such a breach of trust. And I think either at conscious or unconscious levels, even if there is no further infidelity, suspicions continue. And you know, when your wife or husband is a little late coming home from work, you know, you feel a little bit anxious. And so I don't think it's possible to fully restore it, no.
And yet we know that many relationships do continue on, either because of, well, I guess I should ask you, is there low self-esteem? Is there a financial codependence there? Is it because of the children?
Well, I think the prospect of separation, of starting a new life, is very daunting for lots of people. It's a scary thought. And so people convince themselves that it's better to stay and that they can forgive and they can overcome it fundamentally. And by telling themselves these things, they're able to successfully sustain a relationship, but I'm not sure it has the same quality.
But there must be some perpetrators, I don't know how many, but there must be some who are truly sorry. They, not just that they got caught, but that they did it.
I'm sure that's true, and I'm sure that many perpetrators of infidelity feel remorse and regret and genuinely commit themselves to a marriage of ongoing fidelity. But I think there's also some who tell themselves that and believe it until the next time.
Do you ever suggest to someone, look, you're fooling yourselves, you're not going to make it, you should try to find happiness somewhere else?
Well, my job as a psychologist is not to decide for my clients what they want to do with their lives. It's to guide them toward the goal that they state they have when they come to see me. But I'm certainly often thinking that it's not going to work, and inevitably this is going to fall apart.
Do you think that infidelity has become more prevalent because of the internet, or was it always there? It was just not as easy to avail yourself of other people to make contact with?
Well, I think it's much easier today because of the availability of the internet. It's much easier to meet people. You don't have to go to a bar anymore. You just have to go to your family room or wherever you have your computer. Certainly my experience in the last 20 to 25 years is that the frequency of infidelity amongst women has increased exponentially.
Well, they're not doing it alone, so if their incidence of infidelity has increased, I guess that's true for men too.
I suppose, but I think historically we know that at least 1 in 4 men engaged in infidelity, and many fewer women did until women became emancipated in the 60s and basically emerged from the kitchen into the workforce, and they have many more opportunities, and the feminist movement has allowed women to be more equal to men, even in ways that are perhaps less socially acceptable and more devastating to families.
And what about children? What happens when adolescent, teenage children find out about the infidelity? Is it ever a good thing for parents to discuss this with their children?
I don't think so. I think the experience that children have is very similar emotionally to the experience of the victim of the infidelity. They feel betrayed. They feel victimized. They feel as though the perpetrator has somehow ruined their lives forever. And they have to engage in the same process of grief that the victim did.
And what about family and friends? Sometimes as a judge, what I tend to see gives me the impression in some cases that there's people have aligned themselves with family members and friends who seem to fuel the fire when sometimes the couple's really trying to work it out, but you have somebody in the background, I call them the Greek chorus, saying, I never liked him to begin with, I warned you all along. Do you ever counsel people to try to not include the whole phantom board of directors?
Well, it's a tricky subject to talk about, because often when marriages are in turmoil, people turn to their families and friends for support, for guidance, for advice. Right. They're needy, but I agree with you. They often interfere. They often influence the outcome.
It's like they have their own agendas sometimes.
Often they do. They never liked your wife or your husband, and now they have an opportunity to insidiously follow through with their historical agendas.
And I guess if the affair was with somebody who's already part of the inner circle, that only inflames the matter exponentially, right?
Well, I think it certainly increases the level of betrayal.
I want to thank you very much for your insights. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. There'll be more Family Matters right after this. We're in chambers with social worker Howard Hurwitz, who has 30 years' experience working with families and children. Howard, thank you for being on Family Matters.
Thank you.
I want to ask you about infidelity. What does infidelity mean? I know it has numerous components. What's your definition of infidelity?
Infidelity is really when you're you no longer committed to the relationship, your primary relationship. Whether it's a physical commitment, an emotional, psychological, you're distracted and you really are no longer interested or satisfied with your significant other.
So it can be obviously physical. It can be emotional too?
Yes. It can be the kind of thing where you've never met the person, you're having an online relationship, you're on a website, or
even a coworker, I suppose.
Absolutely.
I think emotional infidelity, correct me if I'm wrong, is if the bond that you formed with someone else is stronger than the bond you have with your significant other. All your secrets are told to somebody else, not...
Absolutely. And also, it may be something that you don't have a strong relationship with that other person, but you'd like to. And there's the desire. And you're starting to develop more of an intimate relationship on an emotional level. And from that desire leads to other elements where you decide you're thinking more about that other person. You're wanting to spend time with that other person. You call the other person. You're emailing them, or you actually physically meet them.
So something must be lacking then in your marriage to be seeking out this kind of strong bond with somebody else.
Absolutely. I mean, it can be some kind of longing that you're not having in your primary relationship that you're seeking out with somebody else. So, that's why that other relationship is very attractive, or you're kind of fantasizing or thinking or wishing to have more of an intimate relationship with that other person.
Well, I'm going to be the devil's advocate here for a moment. I think you know that there are lots of websites out there that facilitate people who are attached being able to hook up and have affairs with other people who are attached. We all know about that, and you've mentioned chat lines and all of that. What do you say to people who claim that infidelity is actually good for relationships because if all of your needs can't be met by one person, it's okay to have some needs met by somebody else because then you'll be a happier person, your relationship will be more fulfilled because you're happier?
My view is that that's a rationalization to explain somebody's behavior or justification for why they're involved with somebody else. The research and the information really doesn't support that view. In other words, when you're involved, or when you split the relationship so that you're involved in a primary relationship and everything's good about that except the fact that the sexual or physical aspects of the relationship, so you're going to seek out another relationship elsewhere. When you split elements of the relationship, that's not healthy, and that contributes to all kinds of emotional problems and anxiety and conflicts within you if you're the one having that other relationship. So I don't buy that.
You don't buy it? What about the person who finds out that their partner has been deceiving them? What does that do to a person?
Well, that's a horrific experience. It's a traumatic experience.
It's really emotionally devastating.
Absolutely. Often the person who discovers that their partner has been in a relationship feels a sense of betrayal, sometimes shame, embarrassment. There are many factors. Often the two people have built a life together.
I would think that you'd feel like you've been thrown under a bus.
Absolutely.
And it's not often talked about when we who are in the family law world, we see the couple. But sometimes I think about the person, the mistress, or the offside boyfriend. Right. What about that person? What does it do to a person's own sense of well-being to be having a relationship with someone who's attached and who's not ever going to be totally committed to you?
Nobody wants to be in that situation. Nobody, to use your term, the mistress, nobody wants to feel as though they're secondary.
So why do people do it?
Well, there are lots of reasons. Sometimes, I think that they could feel a sense of that there's nobody else in their life. They may have...
You mean this is the best they can get?
For some people, that could be it. I think...
But what about this whole friends with benefits thing?
Yeah.
It's very popular now. You hear people say, well, I have a busy life, I'm a busy professional, that's all I've got time for. Actually, a relationship with a married man or woman is just right for me because it fulfills a certain need and I don't have to worry about a commitment.
Well, I think that's symptomatic of the fact that that's also an excuse, that really they're not capable of having or not choosing to have a full, comprehensive, emotional, physical, sexual relationship. I think things become very problematic when we start to compartmentalize aspects of our relationship and say, well, I'm going to have 90% of my relationship is going to be with the primary person, whether it's a husband, a wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, and then 10%, the sexual part, I'll go elsewhere.
And is it even possible, if you're having a long-term relationship with someone, to just keep it sexual? Don't the emotions get in there somewhere?
It's very difficult to do that, because even though you go into, let's say, an affair or a secondary relationship with the intent of friends with benefits or just a sexual thing, it's very hard for people to compartmentalize and say, well, we're just going to have a sexual relationship without beginning to see that there's an emotional connection. We see examples of that in movies or people, perhaps with people we know in our own circle of friends, where those relationships end very unhappily. It never works out.
Well, it's obviously a much more complicated conversation than one would think at first blush, and I thank you very much for being here to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
I'm Lauren McLean. Today on Q&A, our question is, my spouse committed adultery. Does it mean I get more or less support? North Americans are governed by a no-fault system for divorce that does not focus on punishing someone who had an affair that has no economic impact. This approach saves divorcing couples thousands of dollars and wasted energy. In rare circumstances, adultery can be relevant to a claim for spousal support. To win, you need to prove you're unable to work or become self-supporting as a consequence of being devastated by the affair. Now, we all need to recognize that marriages are complicated institutions whose failure can rarely be attributed to one party or the other. Was the affair as a result of a bad marriage, or did it cause the marriage to go bad? Because it's often impossible to tell who's at fault, courts by and large eliminate conduct from the analysis of financial entitlement. Remember, the winners in divorce are those who can move on to a satisfying post-separation life free of bitterness and recrimination.
Thanks for watching. For extended interviews and exclusive content, please visit our website at familymatterstv.com. If you'd like to submit your legal question to our Q&A, go to advicescene.com. I'm Justice Harvey Brownstone. See you next time.